You've been making love to the same woman for 30, 40, maybe even 50 years. But here's something most men over 60 never expect to hear. Chances are, she's never actually reached orgasm from intercourse. That's not because you did something wrong, it's because no one ever told you what actually works for the female body, until now. I'm Dr. Mohit Khera, professor of urology and specialist in men's sexual health for over 3 decades. I've helped thousands of men rediscover confidence, connection, and physical intimacy later in life. And one thing I've learned? It's never too late to get this right. You see, most men were taught that sex is all about penetration and performance, but science tells a different story. Today, we now know that 4 specific sex positions, yes, 4, can dramatically increase a woman's chance of reaching orgasm. These aren't guesses or gimmicks. They've been studied using real-time ultrasound and blood flow imaging, and they work because they stimulate the parts of her anatomy that matter most. In this video, I'm going to walk you through each one, clearly, confidently, and with total respect. These are positions that allow you to give her pleasure she may have never felt before. And if you stay with me until the end, I'll also share 3 powerful techniques you can add to any position that will take her experience to a whole new level. Before we dive into these powerful techniques, take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another video designed to help you and your partner reconnect, even after 60. And if you find this helpful, just type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Your feedback helps me create content that truly supports you. Let's begin with the first position, and it's one that gives her full control. Woman on top, face to face. This isn't just about changing who's on top. It's about unlocking the angle, rhythm, and pressure that science shows can dramatically increase her chances of reaching orgasm. 1. Woman on top, face to face. I still remember one of my patients. Let's call him Richard. He was 67, retired Navy, married for over 40 years. During our conversation, he leaned forward and asked me something quietly, almost ashamed. "Doc, I love my wife, always have, but I'm not sure I've ever truly satisfied her. Is it too late to learn how?" My answer was simple. It's never too late. And what he learned next changed not just their sex life, but their relationship. One of the most powerful shifts a man can make in the bedroom is giving the woman control. Not just out of courtesy, but because science shows it actually increases her chances of climax dramatically. The position that does this best? Woman on top, face to face. Now, let's break that down, not in theory, but in what happens inside her body. When she's on top, she can control the depth, the angle, and the rhythm. These aren't just surface-level preferences. They affect which areas of her anatomy are being stimulated, and most importantly, how her clitoris is being engaged. She can shift her hips slightly forward to increase pressure, or slow down to build up arousal over time. And here's the beautiful part. Because she's controlling the movement, she's more likely to feel safe, confident, and tuned into her own sensations. A 2022 study using advanced ultrasound imaging and 3D modeling showed something fascinating. In this position, blood flow to the clitoris wasn't just increased, it was symmetrical. That means both sides of the clitoral structure were being stimulated equally, which is a key predictor of orgasm. More blood flow means more sensitivity. More sensitivity means greater pleasure, and greater pleasure leads to a much higher chance of orgasm. But beyond the science, let me tell you what really matters here: connection. When you're face to face, you're not just bodies, you're partners. You can look into her eyes, touch her face, kiss her neck, whisper something that makes her smile. After 60, sex isn't about the wildness of youth, it's about depth. And this position gives you the opportunity to create a kind of emotional safety that amplifies everything physical. Richard came back a few weeks later with tears in his eyes. "She told me it was the best sex we've had in decades," he said, "and we didn't do anything crazy. I just let her lead." That's what this position is really about, letting her lead. Not because you can't, but because her pleasure often lives in places only she can reach when she's in control. It's a gift to give her the space to explore that, and in return, she often becomes more expressive, more confident, and more connected than ever before. So tonight, don't think of this as trying something new. Think of it as offering her the one thing she may have never truly had during sex: full control over her own pleasure. Let her ride the rhythm that works for her. Let her find her pace, her angle, her climax. Your job is simply to be present, supportive, and responsive. And once you've experienced what this kind of surrender can unlock, you'll start to wonder, what other simple shifts could awaken this kind of intimacy? Well, you might be surprised by what happens when a man's on top, but with one small adjustment that changes everything. Let's talk about that next. 2. Man on top, with pillow under her hips. Sometimes, it's not about learning something new, it's about doing something familiar just a little bit better. That's exactly what happened with another couple I worked with, Thomas and Linda. They were in their early 70s, married for over 50 years. When they spoke to me, it wasn't about dysfunction, it was about disconnection. They still loved each other deeply, but the spark had faded. Intimacy had become routine, predictable. He said to me, "Doc, we still try, but it doesn't feel the way it used to for either of us." So I asked him a simple question. Have you ever tried adjusting the angle? He raised an eyebrow. You mean like positions? Not even a new position, I told him. Just a pillow. What most men don't realize is that even a classic, time-tested position like missionary, man on top, can be completely transformed by a minor shift in alignment. And placing a pillow under her hips is one of the simplest, most effective changes you can make. When a woman lies flat, the angle of penetration often causes the thrusting motion to miss the most sensitive external structures, particularly the clitoris. But when you elevate her hips slightly with a firm pillow, you naturally tilt her pelvis upward. That one adjustment allows your pubic bone or base of your shaft to come into much closer contact with the external parts of the clitoris during intercourse. And when we look at what happens physiologically, the data is compelling. That same 2022 study I referenced earlier used ultrasound imaging to measure blood flow to the clitoral region in different positions. They found that when a pillow was added under the woman's hips during face-to-face intercourse, there was a significant and uniform increase in blood flow, not just in one area, but throughout the entire clitoral network. That means more sensation, more arousal, and a much higher likelihood of orgasm. But what made this meaningful for Thomas and Linda wasn't just the improved physical experience, it was the intention behind it. For the first time in years, he took a moment to ask her, "Are you comfortable? Is this angle better?" That small act of attention, of care, opened a door they hadn't walked through in decades. He came back to me 2 weeks later, grinning like a man half his age. "You were right," he said. "It wasn't about being harder or faster. It was about being closer, more thoughtful. She actually cried afterward, happy tears." What I love about this position, when modified with a pillow, is that it blends physical stimulation with emotional intimacy. You're close, you're connected, you can hold each other, breathe together, communicate without saying much at all. It's a simple act, but one that says, "I want to be in tune with you. I want to know what feels good for you." So the next time you find yourself in this familiar position, try adding a firm pillow under her hips. Watch her body language. Ask how it feels. You may find that with just this small change, everything starts to feel new again. And if that surprises you, just wait until you learn about the next position, a subtle technique that looks almost identical to missionary, but has helped countless women climax for the very first time. It's not about how deep you go. It's about what you press against while you're there. Let me show you what I mean. 3. Coital Alignment Technique, TAT. There's a moment in every relationship when you stop trying to impress each other and start trying to understand each other. That shift is where real intimacy begins. I remember a couple in their late 60s, Jerry and Diane, married for nearly 4 decades. They still made love regularly, but she confided to me during a separate visit, "I've never really reached orgasm from intercourse. I just pretend. I love him. I want to feel more, but I don't know what to ask for." It broke my heart, not because she was in pain, but because they both deserved more, and they didn't know how to get there. So I introduced them to something that's rarely taught, even in medical schools, the coital alignment technique, or CAT. Now, at first glance, this looks like basic missionary. Nothing fancy, nothing acrobatic, but it's not the position that matters, it's the motion. Instead of thrusting in and out, the man shifts his body slightly upward during penetration, aligning the base of his penis or his pubic bone directly against her clitoris. From there, rather than moving in a pumping motion, the couple rocks together. Slow, intentional pelvic movements that create consistent pressure on the clitoral area throughout the entire experience. The rhythm becomes less about in and out, and more about together and in sync. And that's where the magic happens. This isn't just theory, it's proven. Clinical research has shown that women who previously had never experienced orgasm during intercourse were finally able to when this method was used. Why? Because it targets what's often missed, sustained, direct clitoral stimulation during penetration. But what makes KET truly powerful isn't just the physical mechanics, it's the emotional dance that comes with it. Both partners have to slow down. They have to move together, read each other, breathe in harmony. It requires communication, sometimes unspoken, sometimes verbal. It creates a shared rhythm that builds not just arousal, but trust. Jerry was skeptical at first. He didn't think something so small could make such a difference. But after a few attempts, after they stopped trying to get it right and just started listening to each other, he came back to me with a smile that said everything. "Doc," he said, "I think I finally gave her what she's been waiting for all these years." And Diane? She told me she felt something new, both physically and emotionally. Not just orgasm, but closeness. A sense that they were in this moment, truly as one. This position isn't about tricks or techniques. It's about changing the tempo, slowing things down, giving her body time to build, and giving your relationship the space to rediscover each other. So if you've ever felt like you were close, but something was still missing, if she's ever said, "It's good, but I can't quite get there," this is the moment to try something different. Don't push harder, move together, and trust that the slowest steps often take you the farthest. And as powerful as this technique is, the next position we'll talk about unlocks something just as important, not through movement or pressure, but through connection. Imagine sitting face to face, hearts aligned, no distractions, no rush, just you, her, and the quiet kind of intimacy that makes everything else disappear. Let me show you what that looks like. 4. Sitting, face to face. Not every breakthrough in intimacy comes from a new position or technique. Sometimes it comes from slowing down long enough to truly see each other again. I remember one particular conversation I had with a man named Harold. He was 72, a retired high school coach, tough on the outside but soft when he spoke about his wife. "Doc," he said, "we've been through it all. Kids, cancer, near divorce, you name it, but lately, I feel like we're strangers in bed. We're close in life, but during sex, it's like there's a wall between us." So I asked him a simple question. When was the last time you just held her during sex? No rush, no goal, just held her? That's when I introduced him to one of the most overlooked positions in sexual intimacy, sitting face to face. It's a position that doesn't rely on acrobatics or strength. Both of you sit up, facing each other, legs intertwined, bodies pressed close. It's not about how far you move or how deep you go, it's about how close you can be. What makes this position special isn't just the angle, though there is a benefit. Research shows that sitting positions do increase blood flow to the clitoral area, although not as dramatically as some of the others we've discussed. Still, there's enough stimulation through movement and contact to generate real pleasure. But the deeper power of this position isn't found in the blood flow charts. It's found in what happens between two people's eyes when they're inches apart. In this position, you can talk. You can breathe together. You can rest your forehead on hers or kiss her gently without pulling away. Your hands are free to explore or simply hold. And most importantly, there's no hiding. You're completely present. No screens, no distractions. Just two bodies and the space between them, which, in this moment, becomes sacred. Harold tried it. Not perfectly. He said they were awkward at first, laughing a little, unsure how to hold each other in that new way. But something shifted. She began to relax. He began to soften, not physically, but emotionally. And that night, for the first time in years, they didn't worry about climax or pressure. They just connected. He told me later, it felt like we remembered how to love each other again. Now, is this the most physically stimulating position for every woman? Maybe not. It may not create the same pressure on the clitoris as the woman on top position or the coital alignment technique. But sometimes, arousal isn't about mechanics. It's about safety, about emotional invitation. And when a woman feels safe, seen, and adored, her body often responds more freely. Her desire awakens, and pleasure follows naturally. So don't dismiss the power of stillness. Don't underestimate how deeply connection can amplify sensation. And don't be afraid to try something tender, because as men, we're often taught that strength is about performance. But in the bedroom, especially later in life, real strength comes from presence. And if you're wondering how to make any of these positions even more effective, how to turn a good experience into something extraordinary, then you'll want to hear what's coming next. I'm going to share 3 subtle but powerful techniques that can be added to almost any position to enhance her pleasure and increase her chance of orgasm even more. These aren't complicated, they're small adjustments. But sometimes, the smallest changes create the biggest results. Let's talk about those. 5. Angling. There's something I've noticed over the years working with men in their 60s and 70s. They've learned how to be providers, protectors, partners, but when it comes to physical intimacy, they were rarely taught how to adjust, to fine-tune, to experiment. One of my patients, Mark, told me once, "Doc, I feel like I'm doing everything I know, but she still seems distant, like she's not fully with me. What am I missing?" I asked him if he'd ever tried changing the angle. He looked puzzled. "You mean like trying a new position?" "No," I said gently. "I mean adjusting within the position you're already in." That's what angling is all about. It's one of those subtle but incredibly effective ways to transform how sex feels for both of you without needing to learn anything new or complicated. It's about awareness. Awareness of how your bodies are aligned, how your pelvis meets hers, how the contact changes when her hips shift just an inch, or your torso tilts just a little differently. It's about listening, not just with your ears, but with your body. Sometimes, it's as simple as placing a pillow under her hips, or gently moving her legs wider, or pulling her in closer. Other times, it's adjusting your own body, moving a little higher, lowering your chest, shifting the depth or direction of your movement. These aren't big changes, but they can unlock areas of sensitivity that routine motion completely misses. What many men don't realize is that the clitoris isn't just that small visible part. It's an internal structure with branches that extend along the vaginal walls. And depending on the angle of penetration, some of those areas are stimulated more than others. By experimenting with angles, sometimes even slightly rotating the hips, you can find the spot where her pleasure lights up in ways it never did before. And here's where the emotional piece comes in. When you slow down enough to notice how she responds to these changes, how her breath catches, how her body tenses or melts, you're no longer just performing, you're participating, you're partnering. That kind of presence builds trust, and with trust comes surrender, and with surrender, real pleasure becomes possible. Mark took the advice to heart. He and his wife began exploring, not just new positions, but new ways of being in familiar ones. He told me, "It's like we've started talking with our bodies again. I never realized how much was happening in the silence." That silence, that space between movements, that's where the magic of angling lives. It's not loud or showy. It's subtle, intuitive, and deeply respectful. So I encourage you, the next time you're with your partner, to let go of the idea that you need to do more. Instead, try doing differently. Ask her if something feels better when she raises her hips or when you move slightly to the left. Let her guide you. Let yourself be teachable. That small act of humility can open doors to pleasure she's been waiting to walk through for years. And just when you think it's all about finding the perfect angle, you'll learn that sometimes the most powerful pleasure comes from doing less, not more, from staying near the surface instead of going deep. In fact, the next technique we're about to explore focuses on a part of her body you might be overlooking entirely, but it may just hold the key to unlocking more sensation than you ever imagined. Let's take a look. 6. Shallowing. There's a deeply rooted belief among many men, and I say this with all the compassion in the world, that the deeper you go, the better it must be. I've heard it 100 times. It's how we were raised, what we saw in movies, what we were taught to equate with being a real man in bed. But the truth is, when it comes to female pleasure, sometimes the exact opposite is true. And it's not about going farther, it's about staying close to the surface. I had a patient named Leo, 68, who sat in my office and said, "Doc, I try hard, I really do, but my wife never seems fully into it. She's sweet about it, she doesn't complain, but I can tell. I can feel that something's missing." So I asked him if he'd ever tried shallowing. He looked at me a little confused. "You mean not going all the way in?" Exactly. Shallowing is the practice of focusing stimulation near the entrance of the vagina, just the first 1 to 2 inches. That area, often overlooked, is actually one of the most nerve-dense regions of the entire vaginal canal. It's where the body responds with heightened sensitivity, especially when paired with emotional intimacy and slow, mindful touch. In fact, for many women, especially those in midlife or beyond, deep penetration can sometimes be less comfortable. Hormonal changes, pelvic floor tension, or even past emotional experiences can all impact how intercourse feels. That's why shallow, intentional movement can create a completely different type of arousal, one that feels safer, more pleasurable, and more connected. What Leo didn't realize, and what many men miss, is that pleasure isn't always about intensity. It's about precision. It's about being attuned to her reactions. When you focus on shallower movements, especially while maintaining close contact, chest to chest, hand in hand, you're no longer chasing some performance goal. You're creating a moment where her body feels explored, not overwhelmed, where she feels listened to, not just touched. When Leo tried it, he told me something that stuck with me. We didn't go fast, we didn't go deep, but she looked at me halfway through and said, "I feel like you're actually inside me in a different way." That's what shallowing can unlock. Not just more sensation, but more presence, more emotional resonance, more awareness of what's happening in the space between two people. Now, that doesn't mean you should never go deeper. It just means that depth doesn't automatically equal pleasure, and that by exploring shallower rhythms, especially when combined with clitoral stimulation or gentle angling, you may actually help her reach climax more easily than you ever thought possible. So the next time you're together, try slowing down. Stay closer to the entrance. Watch her face. Listen with your hands. Let go of the pressure to perform and instead offer her your attention. That's what she's craving most. And speaking of attention, there's one more technique that ties everything together. Something so effective, studies show it increases a woman's chance of orgasm by over 70%. It's simple, it's intuitive, and it's something you can start doing tonight, no matter your age or experience. Let's talk about that next. 7. Pairing. If there's one thing I wish every man over 60 could understand about women's pleasure, it's this. Penetration alone is rarely enough. Not because you're doing something wrong, not because you've lost your edge, and certainly not because she doesn't love you. It's simply how her body is wired. The clitoris, not the vagina, is the epicenter of most female orgasms, and the technique that brings that truth to life is what we call pairing. Pairing means stimulating the clitoris during intercourse. It could be with your hand, with hers, or with a small vibrator. And while this might sound new or even intimidating for some men, I want to offer a different perspective. Pairing isn't a sign that you're lacking. It's a sign that you're listening, that you're prioritizing her experience just as much as your own. I remember a man named Edward, 71, a proud, soft-spoken Midwesterner. He told me he always thought sex was supposed to be natural. No tools, no extras, just two people and the moment. But his wife, after decades of quietly going along with what he thought was enough, finally opened up to him after watching a program on women's pleasure. She said, "I love you, but I need something more." That was a turning point. Edward wasn't sure what to do. He felt embarrassed, even a little inadequate. But to his credit, he chose curiosity over pride. They went shopping together, picked out a small, discreet toy, and the next time they made love, he held it gently against her while they moved together. He told me, "Doc, I'd never seen her like that. Her whole body responded. And afterward, she held me for so long I didn't want to move." That's the beauty of pairing. It doesn't separate you, it brings you closer. It gives her permission to feel fully, and when she feels that permission, that safety, her body opens up in ways you might not have seen before. You see, studies show that up to 70% of women require direct clitoral stimulation to reach orgasm. That's not a flaw, that's biology. And when you acknowledge that, when you bring that knowledge into the bedroom, you become not just a lover, but a partner in her pleasure. Now, the key is to talk about it before you try. Ask her what she likes. Let her guide you. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be present. Whether it's your hand, her hand, or a little help from technology, the goal is to create a layered experience where every part of her body feels included, not just the parts we were told to focus on. And for men who worry this takes away from their masculinity, I'll tell you what I told Edward. Real confidence isn't about what you can do alone. It's about what you're willing to do together. So if you've been wondering what more you can do for her, how to help her reach a level of pleasure that feels deeper, fuller, more connected, this might be the answer you've been missing. And now that we've covered all 7 of these powerful, science-backed insights, from positions to techniques, let's take a moment to step back, bring everything together, and talk about what this all really means for you, your partner, and your relationship going forward. Because the truth is, what happens in the bedroom after 60 isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something even better. Let's wrap this up together. 8. Conclusion. When you reach a certain age, you start to realize that intimacy means something different than it did when you were young. In your 20s and 30s, it's often about urgency, performance, passion that burns fast and bright. But in your 60s, 70s, and beyond, intimacy can become something deeper, slower, more meaningful. It becomes less about proving something and more about feeling something. And that's what everything we've talked about today has been building toward. If you've made it this far with me, then you already understand something most men never learn. That true sexual connection isn't about ego, it's about presence. It's about learning, adapting, and giving your partner not just your body, but your attention. We talked about 4 specific positions that, according to real science, significantly increase a woman's chance of orgasm. Woman on top, where she controls the depth and rhythm, creating intense clitoral stimulation and building confidence in her own body. Man on top with a pillow under her hips, a simple adjustment that changes everything about the angle of contact and brings you closer together physically and emotionally. Then there's the coital alignment technique, less about thrusting, more about rocking, giving sustained pressure where it matters most and allowing many women to climax for the first time through penetration. And finally, sitting face to face, where connection outweighs technique and the heart takes over where the body once tried to lead. And when we added the 3 bonus techniques, angling, shallowing, and pairing, we didn't just give you tools, we gave you access. Access to parts of her pleasure that may have been unreachable before. Angling, the art of adjusting mid-movement to find what feels best for her. Shallowing, a reminder that you don't have to go deep to go far. And pairing, the most loving, thoughtful way to bring clitoral stimulation into the experience and make her feel truly seen, truly valued. All of this leads to something much more powerful than physical climax. It leads to trust, to healing, to rediscovery. I've had so many men, good men, loyal husbands, sit across from me and say, "I thought it was too late. Too late to change, too late to grow, too late to make her feel things she hasn't felt in years." But the truth is, it's not. In fact, this might be the perfect time. Because now, You're not chasing novelty, you're chasing depth. You're not just learning how to move, you're learning how to listen. And when a man listens, really listens, not just with his ears, but with his hands, his heart, and his presence, that's when she opens up. That's when the real pleasure begins. So tonight, or this weekend, or whenever the moment feels right, don't try to be the man you were 30 years ago. Try to be the man she's been waiting to meet now, the man who slows down, who adjusts, who asks, who notices, the man who understands that being a great lover at 65 has less to do with how hard you go and everything to do with how present you are. If this video has helped you see something differently, if it's given you hope or insight or simply made you feel seen, then I hope you'll take a moment to share it. Not because I need the numbers, but because somewhere out there, there's another man who thinks his best days are behind him, and he needs to know they're not. They're right here, waiting. You just have to reach for them with open hands, an open heart, and the willingness to try again. You're not too old. She's not too far gone. And love, real, connected, passionate love, doesn't have an expiration date. Thank you for staying with me. Take care of yourself and take care of her.